for what it's worth, I thought I'd throw in a little bit of a fun exercise that's pretty basic in my mind, but I think it would be exciting to see some sculptors working this way. It's kind of pre-architecture. It's not coming at it as architecture, but I'm going to break it down and show what it is. And this is in connection with kind of working within the basics of Rhino. What I want to show you is what I did was went in here and I created something. So let's leave the grasshopper window and show you what I basically made. This little floor plan. Not too hard to figure out. I just went in here and I went to curve and I went to my, not freeform, I think polyline. And I drew out a little polyline and then I filleted curves and chamfered edges and thought of a little kind of building enclosure. And instead of extruding it and moving it around in Rhino, I thought, well, let's leave that and let's import this very simply in the Grasshopper. Not very hard. Import that shape, and there it is in the Grasshopper. What to do with it? Extrude it. All right. Set yourself up. I have a little 5 to 10 extrusion because I think that will connect the first and second floors. And then I have a brep. And that's my unit. And I mean, I don't want to think any more complex than that. I don't want to think rendering. I don't want to worry about trying to sell somebody a building. I just want to do something with it. And with that object, I want to find its centroid. I think, which is actually up a little higher because it's going off of the extrusion, not off of the floor plan. And then I want to just jazz it into a bunch of crazy stuff like this and this. And I'm going to show you a little bit of why Grasshopper, C Sharp, maybe GH Python, and Rhino go so well together. And in the end, I'm left with this kind of funny little shape here that I can, let's go in here and just set our preferences to a color that makes people a little more happy. I know blue makes me a lot more happy, and orange makes me pretty happy too. Well, maybe an orangey red, a faded orangey red. All right, so I'm able to select this section and this section, and you're like, well, how is that geometry made? How is that made? So let's go back to what I did, and here's where I have some kind of cool nodes. I'm just going to put in my bifocal tool, which many of you, it's one of the first plugins you'll ever make. And I have a little bifocal tool that's here, which is constructing trees of data. And I like it because it's a simple script in C Sharp that I wrote, not too hard to figure out. There it is. It creates a data tree, double data tree. And you can find these online. You can learn to do them yourself in C Sharp. This is really the extent of my C Sharp. It's being able to script into data trees with indexes. And I see these as kind of nested loops and how I get to the counts. And I played a little bit around with the iteration numbers. I did some multipliers. I basically went in here and, oh, look at that, it shrinks. I've got it set to this little shrinky thing so it doesn't go away when I click out. It's still there. Isn't that nice? That's that little tool up here. But basically, you can cut and copy this script, and then it's a pretty cool script that you basically set an integer b, which is what I call it, to 1, and I'm going to add 1 to it as I run through the list of the numbers, creating new lists as I go. I'm going to find a GH path and do another iteration with that through the integer I. 1, setting it to 1, and then incrementing by 1, and then I'm going to have a number list that pops out as number multiplied by I and B, and then I'm going to output the number tree add range, which is what it's been called, to my numbers, and that's my output numbers. So if it's not making sense here, it might make sense when you click on here and see what's been generated. What I've done is I created a tree of data that goes from 3, 6, 9. That's basically it. That's what that script ends up producing. And as I slide through this and go from here, it goes to 2, 3, 6, 2, 4, 6. If I go here and set it here, I'll go from 8, 16, 24. So you can set that to whatever you want. And I'm just going to leave it back where it was because I like 3, 6, 9. This one's pretty jazzy. That will start putting 2 items on each one. So that starts to have an effect on this, and you see how it's starting to change the geometry. Then I'm basically producing lists of lists. And this one's pretty interesting. I produced three lists with 2 items in each. And I could produce 4 lists with 2 items on each. I could produce 4 lists with 3 items on each. And I could have them spaced and multiplied by that factor there. So the script is easy enough. You can cut and paste. You can put it into your not your GH Python node. You can put it into your C Sharp node, which is in your maths. and get in the habit of using those. Now that's up here, and I use that in one of my many C constructing data tools, and that's my construct tree of numbers. And all of these plugins I produced, all of these, and I'm telling you, all of them are available on my Patreon page that starts at $3 to $9 a month, and you can have all of them. You can have all the GH Python ones that are custom made for Wickerson Studios. You can have all the C ones. You can have, there's plenty of them in there. I think there's 14 repositories. Now, the other script that I wrote, let's close this one out, it's pretty simple. Let's take a look at it again. It's going to take this data and outside of producing this, it's going to produce a grid of points. So we look down here and see what's produced, and there you go. It starts to funnel those numbers into some pretty interesting points. And that's why I love C#, and that's why I love Python, because I think of it as number generators, because data drives geometry. And keep in mind that this is all tied back to this very simple floor plan that I wrote. It could be any geometry, because number drives what the geometry will do. So I hope this makes sense, because this is how I think. And I didn't go to architecture school. I made a lot of sculpture for 30 years, and I love it. So this little script, we'll jump in here and see what happens in this one. And like I said, all of these custom plugins are available. You can find them, you can customize your own, make your own things. And this is one that produces a 3D point list, or an array, I should say, because we're dealing in C. And I'm creating that as a grid of points, X, Y, Z. And these are the data coming in. So as I change this, you can see this affects the it extracts the size of that grid. It's basically a 3D point grid that I can set to whatever I want. And that's not too uncommon to find online. And you'll see nested loop to go in the X, Y, Z directions. And then I have to output them as the grid indexes, and I'm going to append them. I think that's what ends up happening. You just keep adding to each index the spacing. And the scripts there, it's not that hard. I think if anything stays under a dozen nodes, a dozen lines, it's not too hard to break it down and figure it out. Now, I'm not going into full tutorials on this stuff. You have to have a real interest in it. You got to spend your time, and yeah, it's a hard, slow battle up. But what happens is, once you're done the data structures and compiling that, we'll make them into clusters. Not clusters, make them into nodes, custom nodes that you can draw from. And I actually go back to my C# data generators always. So what I did was I have these grid of points, and I blasted those points open. And then I thought, well, let's use this data to call certain things about those blasted points open. So let's call the X coordinate. Let's call the Y coordinate. Let's call the Z coordinate. You can see that I'm scripting the same way I think in GHPython and C# nodes. And in the end, I output this grid of points right here, which is off to this side, and this grid of points off to that side. They're actually, I think they're pretty symmetrical. They're a little different on each one just because they're kind of interesting. And I kept my originals up here if I wanted to throw it on the whole grid. But I'm not even using that one. And keep in mind, you're always checking your panels and you're always checking your param viewers to see what you have. And you love these dash lines when you build geometry like this. In the end, pop on all those forms there. There's your one kind of castle structure. I haven't even rotated. I haven't done anything exciting to this. I've generated a custom construct tree of numbers from a C script, which I showed you earlier, right here. And I customized a script over here, which goes through iterations to make a point grid. And then I literally just took the orient node and popped that on there and this on here. So when I take it off, I've got both of them. I can choose this one and this one. I can go in and I can take a little bake and bring it all together into one unit. It's going to take a little bit of time to load up because there's a lot of little curves in there. The data does climb on you pretty fast. And you'll see your script slowing down as you go. But because it's in C, it runs a little faster in Python than it was going to run in just writing in a GH script. So it really isn't that hard of thing. If I look at it and I count these nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it's still a dozen nodes producing this pretty interesting structure. And I can go back in and say, hey, I made a little castle. Aren't I a Dungeon Dragons little goon? And I love it. So I'm going to take layer 1. I'm going to set this to layer 1. Change object layer to red, even though I don't like red. And purple, I'm going to change this one and change that layer to here. And I think if I take it to render and I get out of Grasshopper, you're going to see that. Now, why didn't you go on color? This one, change object layer to there. I have a color. It should be going there. Go to purple. And why are you not going to purple? Why am I such a fool? Let me close out this. Well, if it's not working on its layers and render, which makes sense because I'm in rare. Let's go up to rendering. Let's scale down. Let's just do it the old way that I know how to do. I don't know why I'm making this so hard. A gradient. We'll set the gradient color to something juicy blue. Actually, I'm not so happy with that. I'd rather have the gradient come up as a color picker. Why is it coming up like that? I don't want custom. I want a color wheel. Custom color list. That's not what I want. I want a color wheel. There we go. So let's jump in here and give it a nice dark blue. And then let's take our materials and grab this one. We'll add one and we'll add a beautiful glass transparency, which is going to cause a long render. We'll grab a little bit of orange over here and maybe we'll just leave it dark for now. Assign the objects clear, and then we'll add another color and go to a really rich silvery metal with a little tint of purple. Oh, purple's gonna be gross. I will just put it into a dark purple like that, metallic, and that can set this color over here to that. Assigned objects, and now we'll take it over and see what it looks like in a juicy ray trace. Let's see if we like what we made. It's gonna take a little bit of time to. There you go. Made yourself something. You can put some spotlights on it, which wouldn't be bad. And ray trace is going to take a little bit of time, and because I'm not so happy with that, I'm going to go back into my color picker and fade it out to a nice transparent color. Bring it into a nice yellow, and that's a little putrid. Hang on, we'll lighten that one a bit. And we'll take it there and see if we like that a little better. And the purple could probably have, I'm feeling a little reddish. I'm feeling a little reddy. Let's do that one, see if we like that one better. Anyway, so that's my little castle. It's not fantastic. It's got a bunch of different things. You can see how it's made up in this side. What I do is if I can't see my technical drawing here, I'll usually go up into here and grab my properties and go to my appearance and colors, and I'll take that background color and give it something to make that purple jump. So I'll probably take it to an orange background and just do that, and that'll make that jump out a little bit. And hit OK, because you have to hit OK on that one. So there you go. You got your pen and ink. Not too fancy. Let's have a little fun with artistic. And there we go. Pretty simple, modernist structure, coded, scripted, rendered thingy that shows a little bit of knowledge of everything except for the GH Python because I've written in a couple of C sharps. And that's how I think, and that's what I do, and that's how I create in Rhino, Grasshopper, GH Python, and C sharp. And if you don't like it, well, that's just what's in my nature and what I've chosen to do. So have fun. Play with your own scripts. Jump into here. Obviously, artistic probably would not be too bad to revolve. Render is never going to render and revolve very well on turntable. Well, the glass is never going to come through. But I built this little building, and it's half plexiglass and half shiny steel. There's coincident surfaces. You'll probably have to do a Boolean union to correct it, and you can make this as complicated and playful as you like. I hope you like that because that's why I'm trying to teach Rhino, Grasshopper, and a little bit of scripting and computational studies in C# or Python for my students in a sculpture department because we will find beauty within this, and we might even throw a spotlight on it. Thanks very much for watching.